Hi, hi. My name is Gil Robs, and today we have a Zoom interview with 2021 Mind the Ducks winners, Allison, John, and Mark. And just we would like to, it'd be interesting to know what kind of experience you had at the Mind the Ducks, and we're gonna go around the room and ask you guys about your experience with Mind the Ducks. And let's start with the question. So, Allison, tell us about uh, what were your goals for the race? What the plans were for nutrition, eating, and whatnot?
Yes. So I'm probably going to be an odd one here in that I didn't really go in with a plan. I signed up for the race, I think, less than 2 weeks beforehand. I actually had no plans for running an ultra this year. I've signed up for the Wine Glass Marathon, and I went in. I'd been following Mind the Ducks for probably 4 or 5 years, always wanted to run it, saw the date and that there were spots still available. And so I went in with a plan of, well, I want to run at least 20 miles to get a long run in, and then we'll see how I feel. And so I did 20, and then I was like, well, I might as well do 26. And then it was, well, I might as well do 31, and I might as well do 40. And then at that point, it was like, well, I guess I really am going to see just how far I can go by that point. But I hadn't really actually planned necessarily on running as much as I did. I think you had also asked from a nutrition standpoint.
Correct.
So I've run a couple ultras in the past. I've run a couple hundreds, 100 milers. And from that, I've learned that to eat as much solid food as I can early on. So I'm a big fan of PB&J, and I eat a lot of PB&Js, starting the first hour and few hours. After that, a lot of times that solid food doesn't taste quite as good anymore, and I just go by what tastes good. Usually it's a lot of fruit and pickles.
Hey, John, what's about you? What was your plans?
So my plan was to try to just do as good as or beat what I did the last time I did the race. So in 2019, I finished sixth overall, and I did 62.75 miles. So I was just hoping to beat that. My goal was to try to at least get one more lap or place one place higher. So that was what I was looking for going into the race. I didn't know how it was going to be affected with the heat and everything and all too. I remember a couple of years ago, it was much nicer. It was in the 40s and 50s throughout the day, and this time was a little bit warmer than that, but didn't quite know how that would go over 12 hours. And so, Allison, you said about your nutrition plan being weird. There's nothing weird about a nutrition plan for people who do these races. I can assure you of that. My first ultra was Mind the Ducks a couple of years ago, and I still, when I plan for what I'm going to eat for the race, there really is no plan. When I go to the store, I think the girl at the register probably thinks I'm like one of the like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo or something. I will just go and start getting a little bit of everything, and I end up with a cart full of crackers and chips and cupcakes and gummies, all sorts of things like that. Because I know my experiences throughout events like this is I never quite know what I'm gonna feel like eating and not feel like eating. So I like to have a little bit of everything and then just grab what I feel like at that point. So earlier on in the race, it was some of the cupcakes. There are some very nice Reese's cupcakes that they have now, by the way, that I recommend. A lot of calories in a short little punch there. But towards the end of the race, those cupcakes were the last thing I wanted to see. I open up the bin, and there's another cupcake sitting right there. And so at that point, things like gummies or chips, things like that. I haven't done the pickle thing so much in races. I accidentally took a cup of pickle juice at candlelight last time, thinking it was Mountain Dew at about 2 a.m. Things, green liquids all look the same. But so really there's no plan other than of what I'm going to eat. It's just more, how I feel at the time and just knowing I've got to get something in, and just hoping whatever goes in stays in.
Yeah. So it seems like so far both of you, John and Allison, you basically just eat what looked good. So Mark, what about you? What was your plan for a race and how to progress for you?
So I went into the race with the expectation. I kind of over planned a little bit. I wanted to run that 10-minute mile pace. I kind of looked at previous results and saw that it was about 70 miles to win it. I've never ran an ultra. And I actually did a practice. The longest I ran before this was I did 32 miles on my birthday last year or at the beginning of the year in January for my 32nd birthday, just for kind of a goal. And I got that, and it was pretty rough. And I just kind of kept researching stuff. And then a week and a half before this race, I went out to the loop and I ran around it for 6 hours and did almost 34 miles, and everything went pretty good at that 10-minute mile pace. So I was anticipating that I could keep holding that. I actually did much better with heart rate and stuff like that. A week and a half before the actual race, I was, way lower on my heart rate than when I was in the actual race. I don't know if that was from adrenaline or, just being pumped up for the race, but it seemed like my heart rate was pretty high going into it. And I definitely started feeling everything around, mile 30 and everything for the actual race. As far as like I went in with the anticipation to get 60 to 70 miles and just essentially, come in one of the top places. I didn't know if that would get me the win, but I knew it'd be pretty close. And I just stuck to my plan, doing consistent loops. I brought my wife and a friend that could help me out at our tent, and essentially just one person meet me before the tent with a juice bottle or a water bottle and some coconut water, and then someone meet me after the tent with a piece of fruit and stuff like that. I went into it wanting to do more, like Allison said, more everything I researched beforehand on ultras and listened to podcasts and things like that. They talk about solid foods in the beginning, and your stomach will eventually turn because all your blood's rushing to your skin instead of your stomach for digestion, for perspiration and sweat and stuff like that. So I knew that I could take in solid food earlier on that might help me later on in the race. So that's what I did, but I stuck with fruit and fructose, like mainly the sugar from fruit and honey specifically. And we pre-made some banana pancakes, and then I just used like tablespoon measurements. So I made about 5 little small banana pancakes, and put them in a bag. And that gave me an approximation on my calories and sodium. And I knew the fruit had potassium and things like that. And so for hydration, you need sodium and potassium and water. So I knew those things would come and help me out as we went on, and really didn't have any cramping or anything like that. Towards the end of the race, my legs definitely started feeling it pretty good, and I had to kind of slow down more at the tent. But as far as the loops, I was able to consistently run like the 10 minutes every single loop without walking or anything. So
you guys pretty much did do whatever I always advise folks to do as well, as far as just eat natural foods. I usually tend to go with fruit as well when I used to compete as well. So that was as well. Plus a seafood diet, which is more like you eat what you see, what looks good, just that stuff. So I should mention, like right now, just like that John had the highest mileage, and he won overall with 64 plus miles and 64 loops. Allison had 63. Allison had 62 miles in, just 2 miles off the overall lead. And Mark won open age group with 63 miles, just one off. So I guess you guys John and Mark kept each other honest. So,
Yeah.
so at what point you guys realized that you were in the lead, John and Allison in your overall group, and overall lead, and Mark in your age group? And did it change anything how you finished the race, or did it impact how you thought about it? Did you try to protect the lead?
John, you can go
Allison?
ahead. Oh, okay, I'll go first. Yeah, I don't remember exactly when it was that I realized I had the lead. There were a few people letting me know, and I wasn't sure I had read the leaderboard correctly. As you know, I'm running by. I wasn't quite sure I'd read it correctly. But it didn't change what I did at first because, like Mark was saying, I was trying to stick between 10 and 11-minute miles for those first, the first half at least. So it didn't change what I was doing there, but it definitely kept me going. Like I said earlier, I didn't necessarily have plans to run over 60 miles. And so it kept me running though, because I'd never won anything before, and it was my chance.
Yeah. Well, you get the 62, which is like, I'd say you brought, all of you got the coveted lunchbox home, so which is, I'm sure you have seen. And
well, and I didn't even know about that. And then you told, as I ran by with 60, you're like, okay, you need 2 more for the lunchbox. I was like, well, I got to keep going then.
Right. No, at that point you certainly had like locked your win, but
Yeah.
just it's like 62 is the coveted lunchbox. So John, how about you? What was your?
So the age group, I think I was in the lead for that most of the day, but the overall, I found out a little after 7 hours. I came by the lap thing, and as every time I would come by for one of the loops, there was always people being very encouraging right at the start finish there, and somebody told me at that point, "Oh, you're about to slide in the first." And I guess at first I didn't believe it. Because there was a young man who was running in front of me all day. I want to say his name is John, with the Can Lake shirt on. He was ahead of me by a couple laps for a while. And I know I caught him on one lap, but then I didn't see him really for most of the day. So I kind of figured he was just kind of keeping the same pace I was going. And I didn't really expect that I was going to be catching him. He was going pretty well early on. He looked pretty young too, so I figured he was going to keep going for a while, and I had no expectation of catching him. So it took me another loop or two after they told me that I was in first, before it really sunk in, to see it on the screen. And then I think at that point, every lap after that, I kept looking and looking, because I never expected to do that well at a race like this. I've done fairly decent, but I didn't expect to be in first place. So the question of did it change my mindset and all? Yes, it did. I can be, people who know me, they see me as, I'm pretty mild mannered and, not very crazy or anything like that. But they also know I'm very competitive too. So at that point in my mind, it did change kind of my thinking and everything. So for the next few hours, it was kind of just gritting it out. And then when I got to the last couple hours, I was starting, I'm a numbers nerd. So I start running numbers in my head. I'm like, all right, I've got this much of a lead. I see, what's going on here. And I start calculating what I need to do to kind of finish. And that's really how my last couple hours, the last 2 hours especially, was just trying to survive and hold off Mark, especially seeing Mark in the last hour. He looked so comfortable out there running, and he was going pretty consistent. And I was, getting a little worried there. And I know if he kind of made another push and come up on me for another lap, I was going to have to really kind of suck it up and dig in and really try to hold him off, because he was looking very strong out there in the last couple hours of the race, especially the last hour. He was looking very good. So that definitely was on my mind the last 2 hours there.
Mark, how was your race? When did you know that you were inching up to the leaderboard and with not too far behind John?
So one of the things I didn't do the entire time was ever look at that screen. I didn't know what place I was in. I just kind of initially this fall, my goal this spring was to run a 50-mile race. And then when I was working out of state, I had stumbled upon Mind the Ducks, and I was like, well, that's a 12-hour race, and that would be very close to that 50 hours. I said, but one thing I got to do is kind of change my mindset about the 50, because I feel like I can do more than that. And if I have a mindset going in of only 50, that's all I'm going to shut down. My body will, or my mind will, after the 50. So I got to kind of reframe my mindset for a 12-hour race, and it's about an hour from my house. So I think I can just reframe my mindset to, hey, I'm going to go in, and my goal is to run the entire 12 hours at that pace that I was doing. So as I kept passing, and like John said, everyone was very encouraging and telling me how consistent I was and things like that. So I knew that was showing. But like I said, I never looked at the monitor. And then I think you came up to me at, it was like 56 or 57 laps in or something. And you said something about you should win the open mile. And I said, oh, okay. And as far as affecting me, it didn't affect me at all, because I knew, I said to myself, I said, look, if I sit here and tell myself I have a win right now, you can easily relax. But I just stayed to my plan, really, and just kind of, I didn't know where John was. I did see John pass me a couple times, and so I knew that he was doing well, but I didn't know exactly where he was or anything. And then Allison, I heard someone actually, I think we were pretty close there. And I heard someone yell to her that she was on like 61 laps or something. I was like, holy crap. So I kind of was like, I got to pick it up here at the end too, because I heard that. But that was, really towards the end was when I found out about stuff, but I just stuck to my plan and what I set out to do. So
the reason why I want to tell you that you are in the lead, because I have had folks win their age group and leave right away. So, and I stuck with that word. So I want to get that one. So,
yeah.
So how was this your first win? Have you had wins before in Ultras, or just how surprising was how you felt after the finish? Let's start with you again, Allison.
I don't think I've won a race since maybe elementary or middle school. So this is my third ultra. I've run a couple 100 miles. I've run a bunch of marathons, but I'm not a Boston qualifier. I'm a slow 4-hour marathoner. So this was my first one. It was great.
John?
So I've won other races before, 5Ks, 10Ks. I've won one ultra before, actually. So one of the people who was very encouraging at the finish line for the last couple hours is Martha Doty. And she puts on a nice little ultra, the Bound for the Hound, 6 hours. And I won that a couple of years ago when they had it live out there. A little chillier that day than it was for us this past weekend, but it's a very nice race, and I actually encourage anyone who's looking for a nice little ultra to do. It's only 6 hours, but it's very nice. Nonetheless, this race was not one that I would have expected that I would have had a chance to win. And so at the finish, it didn't hit me at first. It really was in kind of the days afterwards, the next day, the day after is when it's really kind of sunk in a little more. I was very happy at the finish. It's sore, but very happy, but it's really sunk in over the last couple of days more that it, what kind of accomplishment, it takes to do something like that. And, I think all of us on this Zoom should be very proud of that. It was not easy, and the conditions were definitely not easy for a race like this. And neither was the competition. It was pretty tough out there. And I think looking through the field, there were people who've won the race before there, and a lot of good runners. So I'm very happy.
So Mark, how was your feelings after the race and winning?
Yeah, so I didn't win. These guys won. They won their the women and the male overall. But I just feel, there's definitely it's a huge congratulations to them, because I heard a quote, a little while ago, and it stuck with me. There's no accidents in winning. You got to put in a lot of work, and I know I started running specifically 2 years ago, September 18th, just in a program I started doing for a mental toughness thing in 2019. And I ran my first marathon within 3 months, and it took me over 6 hours. And I've never really won too many races besides like a 5K, just that I did in my local hometown. Nothing crazy. But I just know how much work I've put in over the last couple of years, just traveling and being self-employed and doing my own business. And I know there's no accidents to it. Like if you're up there doing that mileage, you're putting in a lot of work, or you have put in a lot of work throughout your life, to get to that. I mean, it just takes a lot to even be able to run that mileage. Because when I ran my first marathon and it took me that 6 hours, both my legs were locking up after about 3 hours. So, and I just, kept going, but it was, my body was not wanting to do that. So
you kind of jumped into the next topic, what I want to talk about. Why did you start running? Just what was your success before? And why did you decide to try ultra marathons as well? So you said like you started I'll start with Mark at this point because he already introduced that part of it. That you said you started for mental toughness, running 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I needed some accountability in my life. I grew up on a couple farms and been around a lot of tough guys in my life, my father and my stepdad and things like that. And I needed a little bit of direction in my life. I have 2 daughters now and my wife, and I just want to kind of show them strength. And I feel like strength kind of helps breed strength in a sense. So, that strength will give them confidence and get them far in life just by seeing me do things. They're going to want to do things. It's kind of the biggest teacher from my experience. So I started a program called 75 Hard, and it just went through a series of things for 75 days to help you in business and mindset. And it was, read 10 pages in a business book every day, do 2 workouts every day. One of them had to be outside. They had to be a minimum of 45 minutes. Drink a gallon of water every day, no alcohol or cheap meals for 75 days every single day, and then a progress picture every day. And I did those things and for 75 days, and it just changed my mindset on consistency. And really the biggest one in that whole thing was reading 10 pages a day. I'm not a big reader, but I read over 7 books in that 75 days. And it's like only 10 pages a day, so it showed me just consistency and hard work and how it pays off. And I've been self-employed for 11 years and kind of the same task to get through 11 years of self-employment was, just consistency and really how it translates to everything, exercise, fitness, business, all that stuff. It translates really well, just being consistent and putting in the work, and you'll see the result. So,
wow, that is impressive, Mark. You never know who are the ultra runners. So, and you briefly mentioned before as well. When did you decide to try ultra? At what point? How did you get to the ultra marathons?
How did I get to the ultra marathons? So I ran my first marathon, and then I like I said, I've just kind of followed a bunch of people online that have ran the ultra distances, and I listened to a lot of podcasts and things like that. And my initial goal was to obviously run 5K, and then I went to 10K, and then I did the half marathon all the way up really, and then I did I actually did the half marathon after the marathon. I did that marathon for 6 hours, just on a local trail, not for a specific race, just around my house on snowmobile trails. And then I did the official half marathon after. in February and did pretty decent in that. I got about an hour and a half on the half marathon. And so I was like, okay, it kind of hooked me. And then the ultra, you know, through the podcast and the ultra community, I just thought it was fascinating that people were running 100 and 200 mile races. And I've been following some pretty good people in that community. And it just seems like it's always just fascinated me. So when I ran that 32 miles for my birthday, I was just kind of hooked with being able to run more miles. And I knew when I stumbled upon Mind the Ducks, I was like, well, this is perfect for a beginner style because I can really, you know, make sure my nutrition's on. I won't be away from, you know, being able to eat. Because one of the things that happened in the race, I had to really switch from that solid food at like mile 30. I really couldn't take in any solids anymore. It was really affecting. It was just, I just wasn't hungry for it. So I switched to like apple juice, coconut water, and Tailwind, which had sodium in it. So.
Very good. So John, how about you? What's your running background? How did you get in ultras and together before?
Well, so I ran in high school. I did a little bit of everything. I played football, track, and then I did cross country. When my first couple of years of college, when I went to Onondaga Community College, and then I kind of got away from running for a while. I stayed active, but I kind of got away from it. And then after I started my job here at Upstate, people I work with who are incredible people. One of them encouraged me to do a race. So the first race I did was a 15K that they were that was going on, and I remember that was you know, I hadn't run much in 10 years, so you know, and I'm going, oh, of course I can handle this. I used to run, you know, and you know, pull both calves during the race, limped across. Was an interesting experience to say the least, but after that I kind of just kept going with it, and you know, with a lot of encouragement from the people, you know, in my family and the people in my work family. You know, they've been very supportive and really pushed me to do it, especially, you know, like, so my boss signed me up for the Boilermaker the 1 year, and in my mind, that I didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't want to just go and do it. I wanted to do really well. So that's what pushed me to train for it. And that training for it kind of gave me some, you know, I had some good decent and some races, and that kind of pushed me to keep going with it. And that went well. And then I kind of stuck with it ever since. As for ultras, Mind the Ducks was my first ultra a couple of years ago, and that was kind of similar to Allison, where I signed up for it, I want to say about a week and a half before the race, and I actually got on the wait list and never expected to get in. And then all of a sudden I get an email one day, you know, it's like 3 days before to get in, and it was to prepare for another. I signed up for the Finger Lakes 50 later that year as my first ultra, but I wanted to, again, do a race that was kind of like what Mark alluded to. This race I'd been on my radar for a while, and it seemed like it was a very safe race to do your first ultra in. You're never more than a mile from an aid station. There's always people around. There's always a bathroom around. You know, it's pretty safe. If things go squirrely, you're not 12 miles away from in the middle of the wilderness about to get eaten by some animal or something because you're stuck out there. So that's what got me into ultras, and the experience at my first Mind the Ducks was incredible. The people were great. I did much better than I expected to do in it, and it just kind of, you know, it inspired me that this was something I really enjoyed to do. So I've kind of stuck with it, done a couple ultras each year since. So that's what really got me into it, and the thing that keeps me in it again is, you know, I think I've seen this expressed a lot of times. It's a very great atmosphere at races like this. People are very welcoming, very supportive. And not that you don't see that in some of the smaller races, but nothing like this at all. I mean, this is an incredible group to be around. So that's what keeps me going with it.
Very good. Allison, now to you. What's your running background? How you get into running, when you start running? How did you decide to try ultras, and how did you get to Mind the Ducks?
Yeah, so I started running cross country in middle school and high school. And in college, I played rugby, so I didn't run as much. And then after college, my dad had actually been running marathons. And so after college, he got me to run my first marathon. So that was, a little over 15 years ago. And I ran a marathon or two a year for, probably 15 years. And then it was coworkers and friends at work that had run some ultras and were running 100 miles, 200 miles. And they knew I ran. And so they kept talking to me about running ultras. So finally, a friend from work and I signed up for a 100 miler a few years ago. And we did that. And then a couple of years later, we signed up for another one, did that. And then this was my third one. So, I just kind of graduated from the, still running marathons, but I like that longer distance. And for this one, it was that lure of, I'd never run just a timed race, like a 12-hour before, how far can you run in that time? And so it was that lure of, well, I wonder how far I could run. And again, like John was saying, the atmosphere was great. I loved it that people were, calling my name, even though I didn't know you, and, and cheering me on. So it was just a great atmosphere. Sorry, you might hear my kids in the background here.
Everyone family. Okay, so tell us more about your guys' training, how you train overall, just like when you are not racing. Do you run? What's your mileage? Do you cross train? Do you stretch? Do you have a personal trainer? Do you follow programs? So I'll start, Allison, with your.
Yeah, so my mileage is about 35 to 45 miles a week. It's not high mileage. I get up at 5 a.m. every day and run 3 to 5 miles and then do a long run on the weekends. I know I should cross train and I should stretch and I should do, some weight bearing exercises, lifting some weights, but I don't. I just run. It's one of those time things. That's what I have time for, is that 5 a.m. run, and that's what I do.
Hey, John.
So the mileage is pretty similar in that 30 to 40 range most of the time. I'd like to, as I progress along, get up a little bit more than that, but it depends on what's going on with work in the world and everything else there too. But usually 30 to 40 is about what I do a week. Sometimes some long runs though on the weekend that are pretty long, 15, 20 miles. So some of those weeks make the mileage go up a little bit more. Same boat as Allison there too. I definitely would like to be doing more of the weight training and things like that. So that's something I would like to get into. I do, in terms of cross training, I do like bicycling a lot. So I do the long bike rides too. So when I can, I try to a couple times during the summer and the fall get out and some rides I'll ride around, like Seneca Lake or Hugo Lake or Canandaigua Lake. And riding around Canandaigua Lake, I got to see what the course for Can Lake is, and everything I've heard is true about some of those hills and then some. But it's a very beautiful area, and getting out on the bike, you kind of sometimes forget all the hills you're climbing and everything. It's just, the views are magnificent. But I definitely, in terms of cross training, I ride with a few of my friends from work here. They got me into it. One friend, Jason here, he always suggests things, and at first I don't think I'm going to like it. I'll get onto the bike and everything. No, but he's absolutely right about it. And we get out and we go riding, and it's definitely helped with my running, going out on the riding a lot, especially hitting the hills. And oftentimes you don't even notice that, half a day has gone by. So.
Right. The thing about, I can tell you about bike riding is that it helps for hill running. Former Tour de France 7-time winner used to cross train from bike riding, running hills. For that particular reason, it uses similar muscle group. So that's another bit of cross training tool to do. So Mark, what about you? What's your mileage? And I mean, you said like you started 2 years ago, and do you cross train as well? And what else do you do besides running?
Yeah, so when I was on the road this year working, I was down in Texas for almost 3.5 months, and we were pushing probably 15-hour days in a body shop, so pretty long days. But I knew keeping consistent with just base miles would help. So I averaged 25 to 30 miles a week still down there. And when I got home the end of July, and I said to myself, if I can get home, I'll sign up for this race that's close to home, Mind the Ducks. So that's what I did. I ended up luckily finishing that job, worked out perfect, and gave me that. I knew I needed about a month to start ramping up that mileage. So a couple weeks out, I think I hit a peak of 70 miles for the week. And that was a couple weeks before the actual race. Cross training, I do a lot of cross training. So I bike, swim, run, and I do weightlifting and stuff like that. So I've been lifting for a long time, just with high school and wrestling and things like that. And I'm in the middle of personal training certification myself. So I dabble in all that stuff, and I've done a few nutritional certifications as well. So it's kind of my passion is nutrition and health. So I definitely do a lot of that stuff. I'm a terrible swimmer, so if there's any coaches out there, I would love to dive in and get some help. For sure. That's one of my worst things is swimming, because I've had a couple shoulder surgeries in the past, and just the efficiency is tough. So,
well, this is a great group as far as like things what I preach as well overall for ultra training. It's not about quantity, it's about the quality of the training. So you guys are the proof that you can win ultras with 30 miles, averaging 30 miles per week. So early. So all right, folks, you just like now we know how you get to the Mind the Ducks and your running background. Tell us more about you, what you guys do for a living. So Allison, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I work for Corning Incorporated. I'm a commercial director there for their pharmaceutical technologies division, so selling pharmaceutical glass.
So your profession doesn't really help with ultra running?
No. I sit at a desk all day.
John?
So I work at Upstate Medical University. I'm an assistant director here with the Environmental Services Department. So I oversee the Environmental Services group here at the community hospital up on Onondaga Hill here. So there's a lot of desk work to it, but it's a very active job that gets me all around the building and all around campus. So that's, I think, one of the things that helps keep me in shape too, is I still will end up getting 10, 15,000 steps a day, kind of walking around, going to all the different places around here. But it's an incredible place, and it's an incredible group of people to work with here. And a lot of them are very encouraging with what I do, and they're always asking how I do. You know, sometimes they get mad if I don't tell them how a race went or something like that. But they're very great people, and they're the people that kind of keep pushing me, them and my family, to do well. And so it's, it doesn't feel like work a lot of times, even though it's in healthcare, especially nowadays. In the last year, it's been a lot of long hours and a lot of long days, which make it tough to train sometimes, but it's, it's all worth it.
Okay. Mark?
So I'm self-employed. I do paintless dent removal on vehicles. So I'm in the auto body industry. We go into body shops and dealerships around the country that get hit with hail damage, and we either do retail or wholesale jobs, bringing those cars back to taking each dent out. Basically, we drop headliners, take hoods off, take hatches off, and we bring the metal back without affecting the paint, which keeps the original values intact on the vehicles. And we're paid out by insurance companies, stuff like that. Basically, if it applies for paintless, it doesn't affect any of the damage. It's the best way to bring your car back to pre-damaged condition. So we travel all over the country. I've been out of the country doing it too, in Germany, over in the Volkswagen plant over there in Wolfsburg. So been all over and doing this since 2010. And then like I said, I started AOCS Performance, and it's a nutritional based company. I sell a supplement out of that too. It's a superfood green supplement. Yeah, just have done some nutritional stuff on the side. So
Awesome. So besides running, passion for running, besides what you do, so what else can you tell about yourself? Interesting facts, talents, hidden talents. Allison?
I don't know about any hidden talents. I played rugby for a while in my younger years. Now that I'm turning 40 this year, I'm not sure that I'll be doing that anymore here. It hurts a little bit too much. You know, a lot of my free time, I've got two kids who are 8 and 5, so a lot of my time is just spent you know, doing stuff with them.
Mhm. You know, speaking of rugby, actually, I played rugby only once at school.
Yeah.
And when I went to school, there was no rugby program. But I absolutely loved it. And I just, if there's anything, was like, wish there was a program where I was going to school. So,
Yeah.
I mean, folks who have seen me, I don't have a runner's body. I'm more like, so, so I had success in running, but I should have been more like rugby or football player than rugby. So,
Yeah. Rugby is a lot of fun.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. So, Mark, John.
Kind of the same, really no hidden talents. I played tennis also when I was in college, and was fortunate enough to be on a team that finished sixth nationally there. But that kind of helps too when you've got the number one player nationally on your team. That helps a little, but I can still hit the tennis ball pretty good, but nowhere near like I could then. As for hidden talents, I don't really know about hidden talents. Like some people might see me during some of the races. Especially during these ultras, I sometimes start singing song lyrics out loud, kind of without realizing it. I think that's just a product of getting caught up and being tired and everything and all. But I wouldn't say I've got a talent for singing. I guess the only other interesting thing might be is that I probably have the most unique collection of odd socks that people will see me wear at the different races. So for this race, I had my Harry Otter socks, which a couple of the kids that were there saw them and thought that they were funny. But I've always liked wearing going with the Lawrence. People who are familiar with circus basketball, the Lawrence Moulton look with the socks up to the knees or close to that if I can. But I've got some interesting socks that go along with that. So I've got, whether it's like Ric Flair or some Star Wars ones or some other different odd things. So I guess that's the one unique thing about me is you always know if I'm at a race is you see, the weird sock, the guy with the weird socks going by, that's me.
Could be
All right.
checking out your socks now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, same. No hidden talents at all. I grew up playing soccer and things like that. And so we did real well at Red Creek in high school. We won state and sectionals a few times. And so that's about it. I grew up playing soccer and, working on a farm and things like that. So.
I think you're underselling Mark yourself. But you said that you're pretty fascinating things that you do, like started nutrition company, running like 32 miles on your birthday, lifting, swimming, coming up in 75 days of what did you say? That's I think
75 hard, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I just try doing a lot of stuff with mindset and things like that. I think it gets you farther and ahead, not only in your personal life and with your family and kids, but I think it also just gets you ahead with a lot of things. So
very good. Yeah. So to wrap up this interview, so what are your future plans as far as running goes, as far as ultras goes? So Allison.
Good question. So running Wine Glass Marathon in about a month here. That's the next one that's on my list. After that, I haven't really decided. I'm sure I'll do another ultra here. when I did the hundreds, I really liked the race itself. It was all the training up to it that I didn't like. So I'm sure, I'll tackle something like that again. I really liked this race. I love the atmosphere. So I'm thinking May sounds like it should be cooler then. It was hot. So thinking that might be a good one to add to my list there.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it if there was a race in
Don't tell me
2000.
that.
Yeah, if there was a race in 2020, we had this day before the race, we would have a snow. There was a couple years where it was extremely hot. I was like telling somebody that we basically bought all the ice from Wegmans, which is nearby, then from two closest gas stations, and third was we were getting really close to sell it, buy all the ice from over there because we're just shipping in and just giving out. So that was 1 year. So it's like it fluctuates. Like this year was not the hot, not the hottest, but there was no wind. But usually one thing what was happening in Mind the Ducks was usually more windier because probably trees didn't have leaves yet, so it was more windier. But otherwise, I wouldn't count on. It could fluctuate. But I shouldn't say the candlelight as well. Like in the middle of the summer, that is as well. It could be hit and miss. It could be really hot. It could be fairly cold, or like the last one was raining all the time. So, okay, John.
Yeah, the last candlelight was a monsoon out there, but that was a lot of fun actually. So my next race, I'm doing a 5-mile race called Honors Way, which is out in Kingsley, New York. It's a very beautiful race, very difficult race, but very beautiful. And I'm gonna make an attempt at Cam Lake this year for the 50K, and we'll see how that goes. And then that bound for the Hound race I was talking about earlier. So those are my next couple, and I definitely look forward to doing Mind the Ducks again next spring. I found that that's one I look forward to now, that and Camberley. Those are ones I definitely do not want to miss and look forward to doing.
Very good. Mark?
Yeah, so next year my goal is to do a half Ironman in July. I'm thinking about the Musulman one there in Geneva, I believe it is. But again, I gotta keep working on my swimming and stuff like that. So I want to do that, and then 100, 200 mile races are definitely in the future as of now. So those are definitely some goals that I would love to accomplish and tackle going forward. So.
Well, thanks you guys. Thank you guys for your time for this interview, and congratulations again for winning your overall and your age groups, and good luck with your future running plans and with your goals. So, just maybe not running Altos anymore for Allison, but I'm sure you will run. So thanks again for your time, and see you around at some of the Altos.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I see ya.